907 words within the 5% target range. Here's the script. In 2008, 19-year-old Brandon Swanson was driving home from a friend's house outside Marshall, Minnesota, and then his voice cut off mid-sentence during a 47-minute phone call with his father, with a mile of riverbank, dive teams, and cadaver dogs turning up nothing. No footprints leading back, no sign of a struggle, just a trail that stops at the edge of the water. And that is the problem. Brandon was a typical small-town kid. 19 years old, lived in Marshall, worked at a bowling alley, spent that Tuesday night at a friend's place in Canby, about 20 miles west. Nothing unusual happened that evening. He left a little before 2 a.m. on May 14th, driving his own car alone on rural highways he'd driven 100 times before. His parents weren't worried. He was a grown man heading home after a normal night with friends. There was no argument, no warning sign, nothing that stood out. That is what makes the next hour so hard to explain. At 1:53 a.m., Brandon called his father, Brian, to say he'd driven into a ditch near the town of Lind. He wasn't hurt. The car was stuck, not wrecked. He didn't know exactly where he was, so his father stayed on the line while Brandon walked, trying to find a road sign or a landmark to describe. For the next 47 minutes, they talked. Brandon sounded calm, frustrated, a little annoyed at himself, but calm. He described gravel roads, a bridge, open fields. His father listened to every step. Then near 2:40 a.m., Brandon's voice suddenly changed. He said, oh crap. And the call went dead. Brian tried calling back immediately. No answer. He called again. Nothing. By 3 a.m., Brandon's parents had called the Lincoln County Sheriff's Office. The last confirmed word anyone heard from Brandon Swanson was that half sentence, cut off on a rural road in the dark, alone. Investigators traced the last cell tower ping to a rural area near the Yellow Medicine River, close to where Brandon's abandoned car was later found in the ditch. Search teams walked the fields on both sides of the road. Nothing. They brought in cadaver dogs, which picked up a scent trail leading from the car across a field toward the riverbank, and then the scent simply ended at the water. Dive teams searched the river itself for days, dragging the bottom, checking culverts, checking downstream for miles. Nothing surfaced. No shoes, no clothing, no phone. Search and rescue crews walked every ditch, every tree line, every farm access road within a 5-mile radius. Volunteers on foot and horseback covered ground for weeks afterward. The river was low that spring, shallow enough in most places to wade across. And still, nothing was recovered. Not a body. Not a single piece of physical evidence beyond 2 sets of footprints in the mud. The leading theory from the start was straightforward. Brandon, disoriented and walking in pitch darkness in unfamiliar territory, stumbled into the river in the dark and drowned, his body carried downstream or trapped somewhere the divers couldn't reach. It fit the location. It fit the timing of that final oh crap. It fit a 19-year-old who didn't know exactly where he was, walking near a waterway he couldn't see. For investigators, it was the theory that required the fewest unanswered questions. Case closed eventually in their minds as a tragic accident. No suspect, no motive, no evidence of foul play. Just a boy, a dark road, and a river. But the footprints break that theory. Investigators found 2 sets of prints in the mud near the riverbank that night, one matching Brandon's shoes, walking toward the water. And they stopped. Not faded, not trailing off gradually into the grass. They stopped cleanly at the water's edge, as though he had simply lifted off the ground. If he had fallen in, waded in, or struggled at the bank, the mud should have shown it, scuffing, sliding, some disturbance. It didn't. The river itself at that stretch was barely 2 feet deep in May of 2008, shallow enough that searchers waded across it without difficulty. A drowning victim in water that shallow, that close to the bank, should have been recoverable. He wasn't. Remember the running car in cases like this. The vehicle left idling, engine untouched. Well, here, the equivalent is the footprints. The prints ended clean, and nobody has ever explained how. That is the detail that makes this case genuinely impossible to close. Not that Brandon vanished, people go missing near water every year, but that the physical evidence contradicts the only theory anyone has offered. A trail that should show a fall, a scramble, a body dragged by current. In Instead, it shows 2 feet planted at the water's edge and then absence. No drag marks, no disturbance downstream, no debris caught on brush. The Yellow Medicine River was searched, researched, and searched again in the years since. Nothing has ever surfaced, not a bone, not a shoe. Today, the case remains open with the Lincoln County Sheriff's Office. Brandon's family has spent years pushing for new searches, new sonar equipment, new eyes on old footage. No arrest has ever been made because no crime has ever been proven. The file sits, unresolved, 17 years later. So where did the footprints go, and why did they simply stop?